Alright, so today I want to address the question about why do I have soreness in new parts of my body or in other parts of my body that I didn't come to physical therapy for. Well, here at Total Motion, we have our technique we call total motion release, where we're trying to, as you're learning, pull the body into balance by using different parts of the body to even try to do that through their movements there. But the first thing I want to think about is, let's say I had this shoulder that was jammed up over here because I had this neck, spine, and hip all kind of tightened up over here that was causing that guy to pinch, essentially. So initially, but let's say I've had this problem for years. Maybe not my pain for years, but at least we know those tight things have been in there for many years, going back to when I was a kid or something like that. Well, if you ever heard how long it takes to change a habit in research, we're also often looking at the 3 to 5 week mark there. In other words, the body, when you try to change something, tends to resist that change at first because it tries to kind of keep its status quo. So there's actually a little nerve endings called the proprioceptors. That's not one of their jobs to do that. So let's say, for example, on your first session we were to pull all that stuff I just mentioned into a better place. You walk out the door saying, I'm feeling pretty good about that. But then all of a sudden, lo and behold, you go back and now these things are, as the day's progressing to later, they're tightening back up again. And now we've been kind of messing with you. This thing that's been kind of jammed over here and you didn't even know about it, even in some cases for the last many years. Now we just pulled it over here and just went back over there. So we're kind of playing with that area there. So now all of a sudden you're like, why am I sore in these areas that I didn't even know I had a problem with? I came in from my shoulder, now my spine's sore, now my hip's sore, maybe my other arm's sore, maybe my neck is sore. Well, part of that could be because the body's fighting this restructuring here at the beginning. So encouragement for you is, if you know those exercises tend to help you out there, keep doing them, because the more you can actually pull the body into a balanced, better place there, the quicker it is that it's going to learn that 3 to 5 week habit thing I was talking about there. So that's one thing is going to be, we want to make sure the body gets restructured. Now, one other principle when we talk about soreness, though, we tend to not like to work into soreness. So let's say I happen to have been doing this exercise here that I found in the clinic kind of helped me out. But now tomorrow morning comes around and this arm that wasn't having a problem yesterday now is kind of sore today. Well, we would say if that is the case, don't work that exercise today. Go find something else that isn't sore to play with and play there instead. But that's one thing when you think about soreness in the body, as part of it is in the beginning phases in particular is a restructuring thing. Now that also often assumes that we just have one injury. Maybe we have more than that in our history of life. So let me grab this little towel here to help this out with. So we often use this towel as kind of a metaphor for if all the tissues in my body were in a happy place, we'd say it would look kind of like this. But let's say someone had this car accident. They're 16 years old, came in at him right there, and it created effectively this little knot here, like so. Now we happen to call that knot a pain. We might see it show up in the form of a test where that person can't move really well this way, so maybe we're trying to work them in that other direction there. And again, if that was just one injury, we're using our technique to try to make it better. But I see those people very rarely in the clinic. I see the people who had the 16-year-old car accident, but then when they were 20 to 25, they had a bad monitor position that kind of threw their body out of whack, and they added a second knot onto the first knot. And then they had this little fall on their butt that they had 10 years ago in the ice storm, and that added another knot on the previous knot. And then we had this thing happen in the yard 2 months before starting therapy, and then added that knot to that previous knot, and now we're coming to therapy with this pain right here that I'm trying to make better. So it might just happen to be, even if we do everything perfectly, you might get rid of that new knot just to find out that now you're like, well, I came to therapy for this, and now I've got this new spot over here. Now again, is that new spot really new, or is it just the next deeper layer into the towel here? So I've got a little story to help out on this. One of our patients that goes back with me many years here, she actually taught me and helped me out with this theory I call the onion or the layers theory. So this person came in initially with a problem right here. And within a couple appointments, they actually felt good about better on that. But then they said, yeah, but now I've got this brand new pain on my right shoulder blade here, and I didn't have that when we started therapy, so I'm discouraged by that. I said, well, okay, well, let's work on that. And sure enough, a couple sessions later, that was better. but now her left butt was killing her really well. And she was saying things like, are we just borrowing from Peter to pay Paul? And I remember him coming up with some smart alecky comment like, we want all the apostles happy or something like that. But anyway, we worked on that, and then that was gone. Then her left knee below that bugged her. And then she was like, are we just chasing our pain around? And at that point, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure. I was just trying to treat whatever came in on that day. But I think she was on about week 4 at this point, and she came in and said, my left foot is killing me, but I figured it all out. She said, well, if you remember from my story, she was born with a bit of a club foot, so she had a lot of pins and screws in that ankle. So once those things actually were put into place, she said then by the time she was like 8, 9 years old, she started having a lot of left knee problems. And then that progressed to by the time she was in her teens, had a lot of left butt issues. She said, I had completely forgotten about this, but 5 years ago I had this bad right shoulder blade problem as well. And then she came in with this thing. So see, all we were really doing is we were just going backwards in time. We went through one restriction and we exposed an older one, then we exposed an older one, then an older one than that. Until eventually we got to all the layers were kind of worked out and she was good to go. She didn't have that next thing that was sore after that, in other words. We were fine. So with all that in mind, again, as part of it, again, I'm restructuring. As part of it, again, I'm going to the next layer. Now, some people may ask this question, how do I know if I'm truly improving myself to the next layer, which would be progress, or did I actually just strain something new on myself? And that's a really good question because it could be either way when someone feels something they don't like. Now, what I have found is if my system of my body is in general having larger range of motion in it, but I'm feeling something new, I'm probably on the deeper layer. As again, that towel would move more if that was the case. However, if my system has lesser motion on it than it did before, I probably somehow in the midst of all that time, created a new strain on me. So that's something, again, is a little more of a concern. So does that make sense? So again, if you're feeling soreness in new places, if it's early on in particular, it might be because you're restructuring your body. Just keep the course, keep working on it, keep pulling things into a better place. Do the things you know that have learned by not forcing into soreness, but actually working something you're good at. And again, if it's other new places, just gotta ask yourself, have I had these problems before in my life? And whether or not you can remember that is fine. We may, if your body's moving larger, being working on the next layer. So hopefully that helps you out. If you have questions, let me know.